People in the medieval era were tough, religious, and deeply tied to the land they lived on. People believed illnesses were caused by demons or bad air. Doctors might treat a fever by putting leeches on you or drilling holes in your skull to let the evil spirits out. But that doesn't mean that there was no hygiene at that time, but in a strange way. In today's video, we will see what hygiene was like in the medieval era. But before starting the video, as always, I will request you to subscribe to the channel if you are new to it. Let's start today's video without wasting any more time. In medieval times, being clean wasn't just about using soap or taking baths. It was more about being a good religious person. People believed that if you were kind, followed the church, and avoided sin, you were clean, even if your body was dirty. The church taught that praying and confessing your sins could clean your soul. Taking too many baths or caring too much about your appearance was sometimes seen as a bad thing because it could lead to pride or temptations, which were believed to pull you away from the God. Public bathhouses were real in medieval times, and they were actually pretty popular, especially in big towns and cities. In the early Middle Ages, going to a bathhouse was a normal thing. People from all walks of life went there not just to get clean, but also to hang out and relax. These places were cozy, with warm water, nice smells from herbs, and sometimes even food and music, kind of like early day spas. Cities like Paris, London, and Rome had lots of these bathhouses. Some were owned by private people and others were run by monasteries. They heated the water using stoves or hot stones, and some places even gave massages or trimmed hair. But later on, things changed. After diseases like the Black Death hit, people got scared of shared places like bathhouses. Some also thought they encouraged bad behavior, especially when men and women bathed together. So over time, bathhouses started to disappear. Even though people think medieval folks were always dirty, that's not really true. They did bathe, and not just in public bathhouses. Many people washed at home using wooden tubs filled with water heated over a fire. They didn't bathe every day, but it wasn't super rare either. In villages or the countryside, people often bathed in rivers or ponds, especially when the weather was warm. Their soap wasn't like ours today, but they made their own using animal fat and lye, and sometimes added herbs like lavender or rosemary to make it smell nice. Richer families had better setups. Servants would bring tubs and bedrooms and help them bathe. Poorer people also tried to stay clean by washing their hands and faces, often especially before eating or praying. In most medieval homes, people used chamber pots for their bathroom needs, especially at night. These were basically portable toilets that people would empty out the window or into a nearby pit. In castles and monasteries, there were more advanced toilets called garderobes. These were small stone or wooden seats with a hole in the floor that led to a chute or pit under the building. Wealthy people used these in castles to use the bathroom in more privacy. But the garderobes weren't perfect. Since they were set underneath the building, it often caused bad smells to rise up into the living areas. In medieval times, waste weren't really taken care of properly. Most people would just throw the contents of their chamber pots out of their windows into the streets, and this continued in some places until the 1600s. In towns, large holes called the cesspits were dug to collect waste, but these often overflowed or became unsafe. People also used rivers and streams as places to dump waste, which made the water dirty and led to diseases like cholera. Water was a big problem in medieval times. Clean water was hard to find because they didn't know how to filter or sanitize it properly. Most towns and villages used local wells, rivers, or streams for drinking, bathing, and cooking. But these same water sources often got polluted with human waste, animal waste, and other dirty things. Since people didn't understand germs or the need for clean water, they didn't know how easily diseases could spread through the dirty water. Back in the Middle Ages, toothpaste didn't exist, so people had to get creative with cleaning their teeth. They often used clothes or rags to wipe their teeth clean after meals, sometimes adding salt to help scrub away food. Herbs like mint and sage were popular not just for their fresh smell, but because people believed they had health benefits. These herbs were either rubbed directly onto teeth or boiled into a liquid to use as mouthwash. In some cases, people made a cleaning paste from charcoal and vinegar. While these methods weren't perfect, they were the best options people had back then. When it came to clothes, hygiene was a bit more complicated. Undergarments were one of the few things that got washed regularly, especially by wealthier people who had servants to help with laundry. Changing undergarments was seen as a sign of cleanliness and care, especially among the rich. On the other hand, outer clothes like tunics or dresses weren't washed often. People wore them for long periods, sometimes for weeks or even months, without cleaning them. This was partly because they didn't have the tools or knowledge to wash them properly, and clothes were expensive, so washing them too often wasn't practical. In medieval times, lice and fleas were common and hard to avoid. Lice were widespread because people didn't have clean clothes often, and hygiene wasn't what it is today. Fleas carried by rats were also a problem, feeding on humans and causing itching. They could even spread diseases. When the Black Death hit the 14th century, it caused panic and changed how people thought about cleanliness. The disease killed millions in Europe and spread quickly, making people desperate to protect themselves. Interestingly, some people actually avoid bathing during this time. They thought that washing could open their pores and let in the bad air, making them more likely to catch the disease. This fear of water went against earlier practices. When people bathed more often, some even believed that dirt and filth protected them from illness, which made hygiene even more complicated during the panic. As the Black Death spread, many thought the solution was cleanliness and purifying the air, not knowing the real cause was bacteria carried by fleas on rats. This misunderstanding shows how people at the time didn't understand how disease spread and still believed cleanliness was linked to spiritual purity. If they had known more about sanitation and how disease worked, more lives could have been saved. Medieval medical practices were often far removed from the scientific understanding we have today. While the people of the time tried to combat illnesses and ailments, they largely relied on mysticism, superstition, and an incomplete understanding of the human body. One of the most common treatments during this era was bloodletting, a practice based on the belief that removing blood from the body would restore balance and heal a variety of conditions. It was thought that an imbalance in the four humors caused disease, and draining blood could correct this imbalance. In fact, bloodletting was so widespread that it was often considered a cure for almost everything, from fevers to headaches, or even more serious ailments. Along with bloodletting, the use of leeches became a common medical treatment. Leeches were often applied to a patient's body, where they would feed on blood. This was believed to be a gentler and more controlled way to release the bad humors, and some physicians swore by it. It might seem shocking today, but the practice persisted for centuries, and leeches even made a return in modern medicine for certain types of surgeries and blood circulation treatments. During the Renaissance, people in Europe became interested in learning again, especially from old Greek and Roman books. Scholars started to question old medical beliefs and focused more on observing and studying things directly. Anatomy, which was once off limits, became important. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci studied real human bodies to understand how they worked, and doctors started writing down detailed findings instead of relying on superstitions. A big breakthrough came in 1600 with the invention of the microscopy. For the first time, people could see tiny living things that were invisible before. Scientists like Antony van Leeuwenhoek discovered that what we now call bacteria. They didn't fully understand germs yet, but this was the first step. By the 1800s, scientists like Louis Pasteur and Joseph Lister figured out that germs were real and caused diseases. Pasteur shows that a tiny organism could spoil food and make people sick, while Lister used antiseptics in surgery to kill germs, which helped prevent infections and save lives. I hope you understand what hygiene was like in the medieval era. Let me know in the comments which era you would like to know about hygiene. Thank you for watching.